Hey folks, welcome back to another in my series of videos on the craziest, most interesting puzzles in my collection so far. Last time we talked about the Tutminx over here, which is a 32 face puzzle with two types of faces based on the truncated icosahedral geometry. From here we're moving on to yet another type of geometry. This time we have this puzzle here, again by VeryPuzzle, and made in this form of a sphere. And they do make quite a few puzzles in a spherical shape. I think since any Twisty puzzle can be transformed into a sphere of, with appropriate sets of intersecting turnable circles, they've taken advantage of that to make a huge variety of very intriguing puzzles based on a spherical shape, but their behavior is reflective of a different geometry. So in this case, this sphere is called the RT version 1.0 F1, which is a bit of a mouthful, but the RT stands for rhombic triacontahedron, which is the geometry upon which the puzzle is based. Now, a rhombic triacontahedron is a 30-sided shape, and each of the sides is a rhombus, so a four-sided shape with uneven sides. And they've taken that shape and they've transformed it into a sphere. What they've also done is truncated down some of the corners. So some of the corners on a rhombic triacontahedron, unfortunately I don't have a physical example to show you, but if you can imagine, some of the corners are adjacent to 5 faces and some are adjacent to 3 faces. So they took the corners that are adjacent to 5 faces, truncated them down, and we ended up with these pentagonal faces here. However, you notice there's nothing turnable around that pentagon, but we'll see that they've done some interesting stuff with that in subsequent puzzles. And the process of taking that truncated rhombic triacontahedron, turning it into a sphere, meant that the 30 turnable faces on that puzzle have turned into circles, and so now they have this kind of unusual, elongated, irregular hexagon in the center of each turnable face. The puzzle turns really nicely, but I should warn you that turning a spherical puzzle from behind the camera, particularly one of this size, is slightly awkward, so rest assured that the puzzle turns better than it looks from what I'm doing here, right? So as I said, you have 30 turnable faces on here. The F1 in the title, so it's the RT version 1.0 F1, and the F1 stands for fragmentation, and that indicates that compared to its ancestor puzzle, the RT version 1.0, they've added some additional cuts on each face. So on its previous sibling, if we look at one individual face here, we have 3 pieces on each edge, right? So we have a corner piece here, we have an edge piece with 2 colors, and another corner. In the original version of this puzzle, without the fragmentation aspect, this edge piece and this corner would be one single piece. And that meant that there were a lot of positions you could get into in the puzzle where, I'd make a turn and that piece would block off subsequent movements elsewhere, right? Now there's still blocking on the F1, the fragmentation version of the puzzle that we have here. So let me give you an example. So if I made this turn with this face, right? So this face here, for example, can still be turned subsequently, but this face up here is now blocked, right? And that's because this elongated hexagonal shape in the center of the face is not allowing any cut to go through here. So this face cannot be turned. However, in general, this puzzle has a lot less blocking than the RT version 1 because of these additional cuts. So the puzzle turns really nicely. I really am looking forward to doing a scramble and solve of this one because, first of all, the stickering scheme is quite interesting and has an additional challenging aspect. So you'll note that, like on the Tutminx, we have a number of faces where we have carbon fiber textured stickers, like here. And you'll note that they've stickered it carefully so that the lines of that texture go in one direction across the entire face, even across the pieces that are cut. So that means essentially that if you want to fully solve the puzzle after you've scrambled it, you not only need to return all the pieces to their correct face in the right position, but they need to be in the right orientation, because otherwise these patterns will not match up anymore. So there's an additional element of orientation for these corner pieces. For example, And that adds a little bit to the challenge. The aspect of the little bit of blocking that goes on also adds some challenge to the solve. You need to, there's a bit of a maze-like feel at some points. You need to maneuver pieces around, but you need to find a way to do so that doesn't lead to subsequent moves that you need to make being blocked off, or, reducing your access to other key areas of the puzzle. And I've been told that the original RT version 1, where there's more blocking, has quite an appealing solve as well, and is actually pretty different from this one, the F1, because of that additional blocking that's introduced. So it should be a very exciting and interesting puzzle to solve. It's going to look great when it's scrambled as well. You can see there's a really nice mix of colors on here. This is the default stickering scheme that VeryPuzzle does for you if you pay them a few extra dollars. Otherwise, if you don't pay for that, they will send you the puzzle with the stickers, and you can make your own color scheme. I've done a lot of stickering recently, so I didn't feel like doing so much more with all these additional puzzles, so I paid the extra $5 or whatever it was to have them do the stickering, and they really did a great job. All the stickers are really firmly placed. There's no damage to any of them. The colors look great. Really can't complain. So VeryPuzzle has done a whole series of these spherical puzzles based on the rhombic triacontahedral geometry. And that first one, as I said, was the RT version 1. And they followed it up with this one, the fragmentation. I'll show you another example in a minute because it's another quite over-the-top puzzle. But yeah, if you're interested in this kind of big over-the-top puzzle with a weird geometry, with aspects of blocking, some orientation tasks to do due to the stickering, and quite an interesting visual element, then definitely check out the RT series from VeryPuzzle. Highly recommended. I think this one is on the lower end of difficulty relatively, but as you'll see in my next video, there's quite a large variety amongst this set of interesting spherical puzzles. So definitely worth checking out. That's the RT version 1.0 F1. And next time I will show you another member of the RT family, which VeryPuzzle did some very interesting experiments with its geometry. So see you next time for that.